Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network. So excited to be back with the Goulets. I feel like we're home. We're a family now. We've been talking for so many weeks to our friends in Virginia here about their company called Looking Back. Lookingback.net is the website. And you know what, guys? It's so important to look back and account for our ancestry, our history. It just speaks volumes. And that's what these two are helping us with today. And they can help you retrace the steps, your past, your history, your family, and the stories they can tell. Welcome back to the show. Please introduce yourself to our listeners today.
Well, I'm John, and
I'm Kathy.
we're both the Goulets, and we're the main core of Looking Back. We have a few helpers that we can rely on here and there when we need them, though. But anyway, Looking Back is just that. We like to look back and let you look at your family, find out about your family, and how to do those things to find out about your family too. If you want to be one of those adventurous people and try it yourself.
But sometimes you run into a lot of dead ends that way. But you guys have the know-how, the ins and the outs, because what it was 2019, you did this, and clearly you did your own family history, and now you're experts helping so many people.
Well, we'll see what we did it way before 2019 and starting, but that's when we kind of opened the doors a little bit. But it is interesting. This week, in fact, we wanted to speak on something we spoke a little bit about earlier was DNA, and because a lot of people have interest in that. And the thing that I want them to realize, it's not the wherewithal and know withal about it, but it can be the answer to some of the things about it, and about the only way you can get some answers. So that was our gain for the day, and primarily that we're talking about DNA for genealogy. Uh, but you run in with a lot of things because they use DNA for a lot of other things, forensics, and you see it on TV and all the police shows with what they do in their labs now. And they also use it in, I would say, the police, but local coroners use it to identify bodies that they can't identify. And that's all on the forensic side. And then on top of that, there's a large amount of it that's done in the medical field now. And as you know, that there are a couple of companies out there that do both DNA and medical to a certain extent. And one of the things we'll talk about was that, and I wanted to let Kathy talk to you because she kind of was instrumental in things that happened about 25, 30 years ago, maybe
Right.
about there.
At least it was in the beginning stages.
Right. And that's about what I like to call the ethics, but ethics is always still ethics until we know it is ethical. So to speak. But she was involved, and I want to let her speak to that before we get into a lot about just regular DNA for genetics.
Good, go for it. We're here, all ears. Go ahead, Kathy.
Okay. Well, I started out, I've been working most of my life in or and around the medical community. And what I did was I worked in an administrative position, and I was a widow before I got together with John.
Mm.
So I was involved in the clinical part. Plus, I'm a breast cancer survivor. So it's changed so significantly since I got involved in this at first. And I'll stick mostly with what I did after my husband, my first husband died. His name was Bill, so I'll just call him Bill. We did a little bit of DNA at that point in time, only because I was sort of interested in it. And my life with DNA at that time, I began working with the physicians, but not in the medical, direct medical, or in the real DNA stuff. So after Bill died, I got involved in a support group, which I think I've talked about before, I'm not sure. Anyway, in a support group, because I believe that it's very important, anybody who's dealing with a terminal disease, to work with the physician as part of a team, to learn as much about the disease
Mm.
as you can. And so I partnered with quite a few doctors in working out treatment plans and things like that. In order to do that, I got involved with support groups, and uh, I started getting involved in physician groups who were interested in getting involved with patient groups. So I got involved with that and moved on to education. At that point in time, this was pre 1998, I think, 1999, somewhere in that range. And so I started getting involved in being the survivor, or the person who was the widow, or with the one getting involved in that.
Mhm.
And before I knew it, I was being invited to go to, I was local. So I was being invited to go to uh, groups that worked with the physicians through NIH and NCI.
Wow.
I was very lucky because I developed a lot of friendships. I knew a lot of researchers. They knew who I was. I got involved in all of that. So eventually, what happened was that the doctors, knowing who I was and knowing who I could talk to, had encouraged me to be a patient spokesman
Mhm.
for uh, NCI and NIH. I was invited to go to a class that NCI was involved in pharmacology, whatever. This patient group that was not, or actually this physician group that was not necessarily involved in patient groups. So I was a person who was working with the doctors on medications and what to take and the DNA that's involved in it. And uh, before anything else, I got involved surprisingly, involved with NCI and a class that they were giving on DNA and research. And what they did was they were trying to figure out, this is the earliest forms of DNA activist. And if you want to get involved in it, you could. But what it is defining what patients and advocates can do for prostate cancer. And when I started to get involved in that again, everything grew. I knew more and more people. I got to know people who were involved in uh, Blue Cross, Blue Shield, Medicare. I knew Medicare. I knew all of those things. So I enjoyed that part of the work. And eventually I started doing a little newsletter for people. And then from that, I became well known with some of the people who were donating a lot of money to cancer research. And it was fun. But when how I got into DNA was that people or patients um, got involved in working on projects for the physicians who NCI and NIH had set up to work on various issues. One of which was DNA and how that's being used in patient research. So when they do the uh, Glory, I'm thirsty, John. When
Good.
I
Get a drink.
anyway, yeah. Well, John will get me something. Anyway,
Hint,
Excuse me.
hint. John, go now. I'll speak in the ladies' terms. Go ahead.
Don't have to go too far.
Oh,
yeah.
good, 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 good.
Anyway, we
Give her some kombucha.
kombucha.
Yeah.
Anyway, we got to know people. We go to. I'd be invited to go to certain houses. There were some people, business people, who were donating to uh, DNA from the various cancers, uh, with prostate cancer is one and breast cancer is another. I was involved with both of them and was part of uh, groups that were working with helping everybody decide what needed to be done. There were things that needed to be done for defining research. There was people who were involved in uh, just generally being a help and support and defining and telling people what direction to go in so that they would be meeting the needs of the patients, not
Mm-hmm.
just the doctors. And one of the first things that I got involved in was the problem with when this whole DNA stuff started, the problem with people being careful and uncertain a little bit about their work with and what's going to be done.
Where it might show up.
Right, and what they wanted to make sure that nobody was stealing their what they
Mm-hmm.
thought it was their personal stuff. So I got involved in a group that was physicians who were pathologists. And
Okay.
a pathologist is somebody who studies
Yeah.
the DNA.
Mm-hmm.
So then, in doing that, I worked on HIPAA and HIPAA issues. And I don't know if anybody knows what that means, but that is when the person gives bodily functions or parts. As an example, when you have a biopsy of any type, such as uh, for a woman for a pap smear, as an example, for a man for a biopsy. And they would take and they would put that in saving areas. It was different for each cancer. And then
Mm-hmm.
they would have it there. They needed to be able to share that from point A to point B in a way that they couldn't identify who the individual was in order to maintain the safety of it. Now that has grown so much since I started with this. And now it's in the hospital, who in the hospital can see that, under what circumstances, if they want to share it with somebody, that has to be clear what they have to say. And if you go into the hospital for a procedure, most of the time you will have to share it. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and it's interesting because people don't want to share it because there was a situation that also was one that came up about sharing information that you would think possibly was yours. In other words, are you sharing a biopsy yourself? Who belongs? Who owns the biopsy?
Yeah.
Do you own it?
Oh,
Does does the doctor own it?
good question.
Who? Yeah, well, those are the questions that came up
Yeah.
before they could do anything. And
Mm-hmm.
that all was related to DNA
Yeah.
because DNA is within that, and it's what you use to share between
Wow.
one group to another. So,
Mm-hmm.
and we would be aware of that, but a lot of people were not aware of it, and that became very aware when different specialties got in touch with each other, so they couldn't share. uh,
Mm-hmm.
something. So what they had to do is they got together the pathologists and the whole medical area. And this is, I got involved in this. They would discuss how they would keep that silent. And it was very interesting to sit with the doctors because what I learned was they don't understand the same things we do, but we have to be very positive about it. Just we need to be aware of what we're doing and what they're
Mm-hmm.
doing. And John, I think, is going to get into a little bit more right now.
Yeah, I will. And that leads us to the problem with DNA and for genealogy has been used, as we know, to help find criminals, blah, blah, blah. A lot of people are concerned about that. And the ethics are the good or bad about it. There's good and there's bad to all of it. But
Mm-hmm.
most of all, it's the fact that the genealogy world has gone to a point where most of the companies will have you sign a waiver that you
Okay.
don't want to have your genealogy given to anybody else,
Mm-hmm.
your records, in that sense of the word. And but it's still there are still things that happen with it that you can't get by with what the government can kind of get away with. But all in all, it's pretty safe that you won't find that old fourth grandpa was not a horse rustler or something that you didn't know about.
Mm-hmm.
But that has a lot to do with some people, and they just don't want to give it up. Her one son, he did give DNA, but he signed off on it for the one, but he doesn't want anybody to get hits.
Mm-hmm.
Her brother, he didn't even want to give DNA because he doesn't want anybody to get it, and
Yeah.
that's the human choice, and
Mm-hmm.
but it's because DNA is used for so many purposes. I mean, you use it for genealogy. You have the forensic side, the good and bad to that. A forensic, they can find the guy that robbed the bank or that did the rape, whatever, with good DNA positivity. But
Mm-hmm.
that also, you don't want to, you got to realize it also helps identify the body that they found in the river, uh, somewhere that they don't have any idea who they are, and they're going to matching DNA to find them. And then the other thing, as she was talking about, was health. A couple of the DNA uh, leaders, I will say, of today, not that I want to say all of them are good, but some are better than others, I think. But two that I know of right now, which is uh, 23andMe was once one company, and also Ancestry is doing some of it too, is doing some health issue things with it that they'll say they'll take your DNA, and if you want, they'll let you know if you're viable of getting cancer in the future or not. Not always the best to it, but they've got pretty good, feelings about it. There's other companies out there which on the medical side.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I've given DNA for that because my mother had and died of breast cancer, and then my daughter I lost 3 years ago because of breast cancer at 46. But I was tested just to see if I was carrying any of it at all.
Yeah.
So these are the things that it's good for. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
really, when you want to think about it and to know what to look forward to in one way or another. Again, the thing that you have to be most careful of is whether it gets to you or not. I see I'm disappearing here and there, but see what whether you want to go through with some of this or not. It's do you want to know or don't you? It's one of those.
Mm-hmm.
We've I've never had no worry about me. I just look and see, and so far I beat the odds, so I'm still here, which is the whole thing compared to what I know what my past was. But these are all these things that you look at. A lot of people get weary, and they'll get worried. Again, my outlook anyway is when it's time, it's time. When it's there, it's there. So I don't worry about that one yet.
Yeah.
but it can be used for a lot of good things as well as a lot of things that people might worry about. They're worried about some of the movies we've seen over the time with let's see, Soylent Green and being a number, and that's all you are. Logan's Run, any of those, have some sort of that sort of thing to them. But outside of that, it's pretty good. And it's something that I wanted to start out on the DNA is just talking about that anyways. The good and the bad of all of it. The good for genealogy is great in the fact that it can really solve some problems when you're looking for that missing link
Mm-hmm.
and doing that. And that's what I want to get to exactly. But I think the next show we can bring that up a little bit better, and I'll go through the types of mtDNA, y-DNA, autosomal. Those are all the three major ones that are used in uh, genealogical DNA. They also use part of that in the forensic part too to match people uh, to whom they may have found and what they defined who they found a dead person or something, and also to a criminal at times. But the criminal, when you are doing that, all the major ones now will have you sign a waiver if you want to do that and have it allowed to go to DNA. So that's how they are trying to ethically cover that, and as well as what they make the most of them, the two that do the most for this MT or for the physical DNA problems, breast cancer, and that always tell you, please be sure and talk to your doctor about this first. It's not so that they don't get into a tizzy over it if they come back and they've got one marker for BRAC or that on cancer. You know,
Mm-hmm.
it's more than one thing. So that's the main warning there that I like to give people because you can get lost in it.
Yeah.
Uh, and it's something to really think about. What I'll do next week is talk about the types of DNA we're using to do find relatives and in that part and what they can do for you. Because a lot of people, and just for a say so, I mean, depending upon who you use, you might come find out you're not from the country you thought you were from
Mm-hmm.
because they've got so more design, and all of your DNAs like that are based on a pattern, to research and the old what do they call it to me? I'm trying to think. I've done it to my statistics and algorithms, the algorithms and how many people they got in and where they're from. So that's why you would find out if you just took it. Wow, I'm different than what I was.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, I think that gets us towards the end here, I believe, doesn't it?
Do I
Yeah.
have time to say one quick thing?
Sure, go ahead, of course.
Okay. There is it's important to realize too that your background your nationality may change. It's not going to stay the same. And then somebody's going to run around saying, see, this company doesn't work. It's not, they didn't say what they said in the beginning and they're changing it. And you shouldn't be able to change it the way you would a DNA test.
The problem is the deeper you get into your DNA, the more you're going to be more of something else that you may not have thought of before.
Well, more than that, you've got a situation with the more they get people who fit into your bucket,
Yeah.
then you will change. In other words, you may have at one point in time had 25 people in a certain genetic marker. Then after they have new people coming in and doing DNA, they've made that bucket bigger so that it may or may not make the bucket you are smaller or bigger.
I'll have some stories about that later on.
Yeah, but
Awesome.
anyway, it's very interesting to see this whole process work out and to see who you're related to or not related to.
Yeah. So that's, I think, a good good part to leave on right now. And in fact, if people want to know more about it and want to help,
Perfect. Yeah.
give us a call at 804-445-9681. Phone will answer. Somebody may be there, may not be there, but you may leave a message and we'll give a message back or whatever and play phone tag because it always
Aw.
seems that way.
Aw.
Otherwise, you can reach us by email. You can reach me, J Goulait, John, J for John, GOULAIT at lookingback.net. And you can meet,
Perfect.
and you can reach Catherine at Catherine.
Catherine?
No,
Oh,
no,
want me to-
at K Goulet. Reach reach Catherine at K Goulet, GOULAIT, also at lookingback.net.
Right.
Perfect. Well, you guys are so cute. Thank you so much. Pleasure having you here. Hopefully, I get to see you in person one of these days. If I'm ever
Would
in the
be great.
neighborhood. You're in Virginia, right?
Yes,
Yeah, we're in
ma'am.
Never
Virginia.
know if
We're,
you make it up here or vice versa. I
okay,
got two
we're,
boys though, 6 and 8. So I live out on Long Island, so it's kind of hard to get out, to be honest. You remember
well,
those days, right?
they would be perfect for here
Yeah.
because we have fishing right across the street.
Wow.
And if they like that,
Of
that's
course.
it's perfect. We live in a town where they have fishermen in and out all the time,
Wow.
and that we catch oysters, and we're one of the cities right along the Rappahannock River.
I'm gonna look at the map after we're done. I'm gonna check you
Okay.
out. I also want to take them to like Colonial Williamsburg. How far away are you from there?
An hour,
About an
Not
hour and a
bad.
half.
Not
an
bad.
hour. I checked it out.
I
Well,
love
yeah,
it.
they say, yeah,
All right, I'll look you guys up. We'll talk next week. Thank you guys for being here again. Really
Okay.
yeah.
appreciate you too. Have a great day. Thank you, Goulait.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
Mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house. And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned. This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.